First item on the agenda, Secretary's report.
If you will, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I've been made aware in advance that the Dennis Braun, the Mendon liaison, is not anticipated to make this meeting, and Mr. Finn is also, Noel Bill is also not anticipating the ability to come to the meeting.
Thank you very
I
much.
wish everyone the best.
All right. Sorry about that, as I was jumping right in. Mr. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I reviewed the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of September 20th, 2018, and I make a motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Motion made and second to accept the minutes. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Treasurer's report.
Yes, this evening in your folder, you would have received the September 30th, 2018 Treasurer's Report. Cash balance at the end of September was $5,771,460.97. There was $5,071,123.52 in local funds and $700,337.45 in project funds. During the month, there was really very low activity in terms of revenue coming in. There wasn't any extraordinary revenues coming in, and cash balance did decrease from the beginning of the year, mainly due to an increase in the payroll. And you may recall in August, and we had received several grants in advance of the start of school, and that starts to slow down at the beginning of the school before it starts ramping up again. And then our student activity, it continues to be high as the children return to the school. Beyond that, there was really nothing unusual for the month.
Any questions for the treasurer?
Move we accept as written.
Second.
Motion made. Comments, discussion?
I'd like to confirm the treasurer says nothing unusual happened. That's good news.
Indeed it is.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Report is accepted. Thank you very much, Barbara. Very sorry for your loss. Go ahead and get out of here.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, student recognition. Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it is my honor to first recognize Andrew Ray. Please come forward. Andrew has received to us a letter of commendation as earning the National Merit Scholarship Program for outstanding performance on the SAT. He is recognized as a National Merit Scholarship qualifying test 2017. This is an incredible honor. This is a national competitive arrangement involving some, I believe, 50,000 test takers. And Andrew is obviously received distinction among his peers across the nation, and we're glad he's a Valley Techer. No check yet. Also, if I may, Mr. Chairman, proceeding in this category, I invite Dave Gliston and Sal D'Amato to join me. Please. I trust the committee members know, certainly the facility subcommittee knows, that we worked closely with Sunshine Sign. Is that the current name of the company?
Yeah, we're still using that.
All right, fine. In a tandem, as we traditionally do, with Valley Tech using its student power and talent and that of multiple vocational technical programs to actually enhance the scoreboard in the backyard. Unibank was also a critical donor in that process, and also the golf tournament and a variety of other fundraising. But these two gentlemen worked closely with us and with me relative to making that possible. It's also, their assistance also came into play on the, in concert again with the facility subcommittee led by Mr. Lavin. The committee saw several renditions and blueprints relative to the front sign, which is the first digital sign in the town of Upton, which has already received compliments from multiple individuals, vendors, and others. And it was at the suggestion of Dave Glissman and Dave and Sal that they recognize the student who had a primary role in the design and the detailed work associated with the front and the sign. And that would be Tim Snow. Tim, please, joins us with his mother. Tim is now a graduate, so welcome back. So, but I want over here, please. Get you on camera. Come on in. So I'd like to give Mr. Glissman a chance to make some comments about how this works for the business community, working directly with Valley Tech and one of its students.
Yeah, I know you have a busy agenda, so, and excuse my voice, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm sorry, but I did want to take the opportunity tonight to share a few pointed comments just about the process that we went through with your new main identity sign with the electronic messaging component. Tim came to our facility with a strong desire to do something really special for the school, and his enthusiasm quickly permeated into our lead design gentleman, Lloyd Gevry, and our production manager, Sean McGlone, and they took the time to show Tim some of the options that would be available to him if he chose an advanced manufacturing approach to the sign that he wanted to create. He went back and did some extremely detailed, very intricate CAD drawings that he then brought back. We worked with his CAD drawings and brought that whole process into a feasible production schedule and what was achievable through the materials that made most sense for longevity and for the look that he wanted. I can tell you that the sign that he designed is something that we would design for a very, very high-end client. It has a number of elements which are very sophisticated. The lettering that says BVT are called halo-lit channel letters. There is LED lighting inside them so that they light very softly around the outside of the letter to give it a very, very elegant appearance. The letters that say the name of the school are pushed through acrylic letters that are inserted into a face that is stencil cut out of a large flatbed router. The sign is lit with LED lighting, and what's I think most striking about it is it has a lot of radius and flowing elements to it. And I would tell you that for a student to be able to design something of that magnitude, with that proportion and with that synergy is, we thought, very worthy of mention and very worthy of the praise of not only our company but of your entire board. And I would tell you that through this whole process and mirrored in the football identity scoreboard electronic messaging sign system that you have, we found that the enthusiasm of the school, the staff, and the students has been really, really remarkable. And I honestly, we're a member of the Mass Higher Education Consortium. We work for probably 60 to 80 different colleges. We work for every college in the city, and we work for a lot of school districts. I can't tell you any one of them that could hold a candle to what Dr. Fitzpatrick has done here. You have a really, really fantastic program, and that level of enthusiasm quickly draws the business community in to be as helpful as we can. And just an example of how that works, because we needed to get into a certain budget, we were able to go back to Unibank and had a surplus sign that they couldn't use that had an electronic messaging unit in it. Because of how we explained it to them, because of the effort that Tim put into it, they donated that sign to us, which is a $17,000 donation. And it's really the efforts of Dr. Fitzpatrick, your staff, and the fine job that Tim did. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm very, very proud for myself and for our membership to just be a small part of the success you've done here. And I thank you for the opportunity to work with you, and I can tell you that we stand ready to be there whenever you need us. And extremely, extremely, very, very gratifying to work with. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, thank you. Wow.
After the meeting, I did leave just a series of photos that you can browse through. Some of these show the framework, and they would be just helpful so you can see the complexity of what Tim designed.
No, thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for the kind words and for all the work you did on that, Tim. Great job, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, a couple things, and for the public that may see the video on this. This is a perfect opportunity to showcase the partnerships that we reference. Okay, cost-effective partnering with the private sector, with our own skill, talent, allowing them to blossom, to showcase what they could do, at maximizing the investment made by our communities so that we could have the impressive signage and scoreboard activities through the, through donations and through the work of welding and electrical and carpentry and painting and decorating, and you name it. And the last thing I need to say here is that, Sal D'Amato would be pleased that I know, Tim knows that I knew his grandfather quite well, Reno Bacci. And Reno looks down from heaven, and no surprises about the success of this young man and his proud Italian connections. So, God bless. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Moving on. Student representatives, Jake and Logan.
Well, just me today was not able to be with us. But last Friday, the Student Council Executive Board attended a leadership conference at Holy Cross, and where we explored a lot of different workshops on how to be a better leader and everything. Tomorrow, not the rest of the Student Council, small groups of Student Council will be attending another conference where 35 of our members will be attending. And we are also starting to put together Thanksgiving baskets for families that are in need at BVT, and they will be ready to pick up on November 19th. And that's it. Any questions?
How are you getting the ingredients for the baskets?
They're all, we set up a system, so we call it the turkey run. And it's like basically a competition between, we have these teams during the student council meetings, and whoever brings in the most like items for all the food, like canned goods, like turkeys, milk, things like that, gets like a small prize at the end.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. See, Mr. O'Neill's already getting into position.
It's going now. Just like some.
It takes a minute.
Just, you have to warm up. Old age.
Well, so, hello, everybody. Nice to see everybody. I'd like to introduce two students that went on the Dominican Republic trip. They're also students that I teach currently. Emma Heinstein, senior in my AP U.S. history class, and Honor DePutman is a junior in my honors world history class. Oh, there we go. So what I wanted to do is just to go through quickly an overview of some of the things we did and show you pictures of what we did, and then have each of the students talk about things that were memorable to them and things that they took away from the trip. And certainly make themselves available to any questions that you might have. Oh, great. Is that clear enough for everybody? So we went to the DR we've done a couple of trips in the past, and we went to a different area of the country. So we were able to participate in a couple of different activities. We participated in algae collection, we participated in mangrove restoration and coral reef restoration. The organization was Verde Profundo, and this is sort of like their grassroots effort. It's an NGO, it's a local NGO, and this is sort of like where they are currently beginning to grow their mangrove shoots that they're going to bring, and they're going to put them out here to grow, and then it's a transition, and then they'll transition into a larger mangrove area. And also here is they have their coral reef things. So we started off our time with learning some snorkeling safety. They were very conscientious of safety, no understanding that the students are going to be in water and they're going to be snorkeling. And we always had experts with us. The experts were deep water scuba divers, lifeguards, and they were all experts in water safety, and they put the kids through their paces, learning about snorkeling. And these are our students that went, and we went with a larger group. We went with McAuliffe School in Framingham. It's a middle school, charter school, I believe. Great bunch of people. And so this is Mickey. He is the person that started this with his family many years ago. And we just went through our introductions, and they're very passionate. The family is very passionate about what they want to do. They want to make sure that their island is environmentally friendly, and that not just environmentally friendly for the standpoint of tourists coming, but the people living there understand the importance of maintaining their environment. And this is our time spent, just a couple of pictures that encapsulate our time spent on the coral reef restoration. And they're basically just taking coral reefs, and I couldn't believe it. They were zip tying them to a structure that they developed. And the structure itself, once the coral reef grows large enough, over time the structure itself disintegrates. And so the coral reef is left as the actual structure. And as the coral reef grows to an acceptable size, they then transition these to deeper water. And it it continues to grow the coral reef restoration. On mangrove restoration, they were cutting PVC tubes, and it's really great. They put the mangrove in top of the PVC tube, and then jam it down into the water, and eventually the roots reach down into the water, and as they grow older and older, they're removed and put into regular mangrove swamps. And then this is the results of their work. All of these tubes were what our students put out there in terms of all of the mangrove shoots. Do you remember how many it was?
It was over 200. I think it was like 250. Yeah.
Yeah, they were out there for a while.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. I didn't put pictures of everything. It was just I didn't want to take up everybody's time. One of the things that I thought was important was the fact, again, teaching the local fishermen that to be sustainable, rather than taking people out to fish and to take the fish out of the reef. Why not teach them how to transition and bring people out to the reef to snorkel, to see the fish? So they're trying to explain to the fishermen, you can take somebody out there and fish, and that one fish will pay your wages for the day, but then when that fish is gone, the fish is gone. Whereas you can take people out there every day to snorkel and see the same habitat, the same fish, and then you have a more sustainable livelihood. And so the students worked on refurbishing the boats. They built a floating buoy. It's a buoy that's chained to the bottom. Rather than everybody dropping their chains at different parts of the coral reef and destroying the habitat, they have these floating anchor sites where it's just basically a plastic 55-gallon drum that floats in the water, and the boats actually go up there and tie to that. And it's a sustainable docking system. And then the last picture, and the last thing you have for me, and I'll let the students take over, is that these are our students, and these are our scuba divers that were with us the entire time that we were in the water. And it was really a close-knit, we became a close-knit group. It was really a fun time, So since you're the senior, I will defer to you first if you wanted to talk.
My favorite personal experience was interacting with the locals. I've never been out of the country personally, so this is my first trip abroad. And talking to the locals, and even though they definitely struggled because English wasn't their main language, but the effort to see that they put in to speak with us and try to teach us about the environment and what they had learned was really touching to me. And just to see how they lived and stuff was enlightening for me to learn about. I liked, personally, I'm in culinary here, and we were taught how to make tostones, and I got to participate in that and work with a local woman, and I found that so enriching just to learn about their culture and the type of food that they have, which is different than ours, and yeah, that was probably my favorite part.
My favorite part of the entire experience was being able to do the community service aspect of it. I never got to go out of the country, and to be able to help the locals with something that they're so passionate about. For me, my favorite part was the mangrove planting, because after the hurricane a couple years ago, all the mangroves were swept away and the ecosystems were not thriving like they should have. So to be able to plant baby mangroves and know that 10, 15, 100 years from now, people will be able to see the ecosystem thrive, that was the most important part to me.
Do you guys have any questions for?
How come America hasn't had a chance to travel more? Shows at home?
Too many tours.
So do you think that this is something that, that you would participate in as you grow older?
100%. I loved it. I would go back every year if I could.
This experience is why I want to study abroad, because being able to emerge in a new culture, don't give everyone that face.
There you go. Give it back. And you have a lot of supporters here.
But to be able to be immersed in a culture that is so completely different from America, but yet they still have the same core values, they still care about the earth, they still have their family, their friends, and being able to see that was just an amazing experience. I definitely want to study abroad because of it now.
Thank you. That, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that ends the good news. The next one is the presentation of the audit by Curtis.
Wait, no.
You've got to,
He's got,
you've got your request coming.
yeah, I was gonna say, he's gotta get his request in first.
You still get me, sorry. So I'm also up here trying to kill two birds with one stone, presenting our trip from last year, but also to propose, to get a vote on the proposed trip for 2020 to Europe next April vacation. To Austria, we're going to Austria, Germany, Switzerland. Sorry. There's a lot of enthusiasm throughout the school, as it's more or less becoming a self-sustaining entity. There's a lot of student interest. There's a lot of student interest in community service trips. There's a lot of student interest in trips for 2021. Basically, the value of this trip is, again, we're going to go and take the students. When we're in Munich, one of the side trips is go to see Dachau. And, that has a lot of value for the students to go and see a concentration camp. As a history teacher, I see the value in that.
I happen to notice as I crossed the Boston Common earlier today that they have a display of survivors, large. I don't know if that's something that could be used just to add to the resources for teaching in the classroom.
Absolutely. I'm open for
Yeah.
any resource.
Yeah, they had quite a following, moving from station to station, taking photos.
Is that a transitioning?
I don't know how long it's there. So, I mean, it looks like the weather is solid, but each live photo, almost billboard size, had a picture of the experiences of that particular person, survivor.
Oh, that's interesting.
I knew it was there because I saw that in the Boston papers, but I didn't see it in its actual display mode until today, really.
Right.
as we're thinking about this, and how are things going for the 19 trip?
Things are going great. We're just transitioning it is. I had a student meeting 2 weeks ago. I had a parent meeting last Thursday. You know, just to prepare them. You know, there's a certain timeline for everything to be done. And so it was a very well received parent meeting. We sort of talked about the do's and the don'ts, what to prepare. You know, EF is always there are a lot of options you can take on these tours. So I sort of went through with the parents like, this is a good option, this is not a good option. It's not value, you know, there's not value in this, you know, if we're driving somewhere, you know. Just very well received. I think the parents like the contact, and you know, it puts them at ease. As a parent, it puts them at ease to see the person, to hear the person, to have that interaction with the person, to hear my philosophies, my experiences, you know, and then it allows them to ask the question, and then I'm always wondering, because sometimes as students, you give them the information, and sometimes students don't tend to give them the same information, you know. So that's pretty much set up. The parents receive the same sheets the students get, so that the parents know when the student meetings are, and they have a schedule of meetings. So basically, the next time I'll see the students is in the beginning of January, and then I'll see the parents like a week after that, and then in March we'll meet together. You know, that's our last meeting. You know, last minute questions and stuff like that.
How many are signed up for that trip?
With students and chaperones, it's 52 people.
Do you see, do students have the opportunity to go multiple years if they can, if it works out? Do you see them take advantage of it?
There are students, there's one student, they don't go anymore, but they went all 4 years. So, but yeah, they take advantage of it. I mean, by coming to you now and putting the vote forward for the 2020 trip, there are students, they know, they're not dumb, they understand, they see stuff come in. I got a box in my class with all the in preparation, hopefully for a yes vote, sorry. You know,
I was gonna say, I saw the sign as I walked down the hall.
right, so the students, listen, I've been teaching for 20 years, and these students, they're sharp as a tack. They see these things come in, and there are students that I don't have in class anymore, or at all, and they come up and, hey, so-and-so said that you received an EF. Does that mean that? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. Well, just give me some time. We'll get this all rolling out. You know.
So now they're scoping out your math too.
Yeah, they have contacts in the mailroom, yeah.
Oh, right. It never ceases to amaze me how they get their information or what they're putting together to come to their conclusions, and sometimes and rarely they're right. You know.
No, I was just curious, especially about the carryover, because you do a different trip every year. So a lot of variety.
Try to. And some of these, by the way, some of these, it's getting to the point now where the trips that I'm proposing are student driven. There's students coming to me and be like, hey, have you ever considered going to X? Have you ever considered going to Y? You know, and I'm like, yes or no. And so there a lot of these things are student driven, and there's interest in these trips. And
Chet, you had a question?
I just want to move the approval.
Oh, okay. No,
I'll second that.
Yeah, I just want, a little more color behind some of the history and some of this stuff is helpful. So we have a motion made and second to kind of give this tentative approval, subject to, further planning and determinations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So that's all set. You can go ahead and get moving on the planning for 2020.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Don't say too late. Stop, good stops.
I know. All right, thank you. On the screen soon.
Now we got Curtis.
Unfortunately, I don't see Kyle here yet, so I'll go through a couple of the items that I'm scheduled for. And then I did bring in, with the permission of the chair, Todd Bard from Leap Energy Group, who is going to be having a discussion about the status of our solar audit project that we've got external to the building. But anyway, until Kyle hopefully gets here, we'll just go ahead and move to item 7.2, E&D certification. That was submitted timely. Been back and forth with our rep, who is temporary at this point. I do expect, I've been answering some questions, partially on the sale of the land. And it looks like we're gonna probably come in around $1 million. I do want you to realize that $360,000 of that was driven by the sale of the land, so the difference is what we normalized for our E&D. I think we'll have some offsets in terms of receivables that are hanging out there that we haven't collected at this point. But other than that, it seems like it's going to be a pretty smooth project. I do think we've made a commitment to take the $360,000 and put it towards our capital projects, possibly even the roofs. I know we still need to have the conversation, but we thought that would be a perfect use of the funds considering the sale of that land.
If I may, I think it might be good to elaborate a little bit on that. We in that thinking, we're also operating under the understanding that it's more consistent with the way the state would prefer money generated from a sale of that nature, as far as its function and purpose, right? So it's not, that money is not available, for example, for raises or for other random purposes, even though there may be other worthy things to do. We based on our interactions with Department of Revenue, DESE, with the auditors and others, that there's an alignment issue here as far as how money is raised, appropriated, and then utilized. So there's a connection. So no one should conclude that it's available to be distributed in some other form.
Yeah, I think originally we looked at the law and it said it had to be reserved for the development or purchase of other land. Well, we're not in the business of buying land, and that was donated to us. In fact, the Department of Revenue's guidelines do not even cover that for a regional school district, so they referred me back to the Department of Education. So working with those individuals, we ultimately credited that, even with the knowledge of Mary Jane Handy, who is over DOR, to that miscellaneous revenue with the commitment that we were going to be transferring it to capital projects.
And one added comment, the recommendation that has been shared relative to the utilization of this for as a major contributor to the next roof project for our 54-year-old building, it has multiple benefits. Number one, it means that it would be a source of money that we wouldn't be asking the towns to generate or appropriate, or certainly not enter into any debt, given their current financial situation. And we would submit in harmony with Mass School Building Authority for a repair project, working with facilities, our own facility department and the facility subcommittee, enjoying 53.53% reimbursement. So for every dollar, you get $1.53 out of spending that. So when the 53% comes back, that'll be available again to the committee to decide how best to utilize it consistent with the manner in which that money
I think we've got an estimate that maybe we're going to need maybe 800 or 850 for that final project, or section of the roof. And then we're going to be coming back over to the 100 wing, because I know we're already starting to see, after the amount of time that it's been, and it was only I think it was a white knight system that we used. It wasn't a full roof replacement, so we got using those dollars that are generated to address this side of the roof again. So it does have a tendency to just rotate through. Any additional questions on that? Okay, so there are no line item transfers or donations for the FY19 grant applications. I think that was included as an additional handout. So here's a listing of the grants. What I thought was kind of interesting is with the exception of SPED 94 142 and Title 4 and a very small gain on Perkins, we had a loss of revenue overall of about $23,000 in our entitlements. That was mainly driven by Title I, and it was significant, around $29,797. What we found out in the process, because I think you need to understand how that particular grant works, it is driven by, it's income-based, and it's driven by poverty factors in our 13 communities. So there are normally 4 funding streams, 4 funding streams to Title I. We've only traditionally qualified for 3 of the 4. 2 of the 3 that we qualify for have a minimum threshold of 5% for a poverty factor. And I put in there in a note, that in the prior year, we were at 5.4%. We've now dropped below that to 3.63, which automatically excludes our ability to take advantage of two of funding streams out of the three, which means we're down to a basic grant. That has a 2% threshold on it, so if we ever fell below that, we would get nothing. I don't see us necessarily getting to that point. We've got a little bit way to go, but nonetheless, it's just good to understand what drives those dollars. Additionally, we've got 2 teaching assistants that come out of that pot of money that are just around $67,000 in terms of wages. So in order to balance that out, we flexed Title IV and Title IIA funds into Title I. We still needed to pick up about $7,000 out of the general fund. Additionally, the monies that were picked up under Title IIA, which is really about high-quality instruction and professional development, that will now have to be borne by the general fund as well. For the Title IV, which is general academic support and student success, we usually use that to offset AP exams. We certainly do not have to use it for that purpose, so it's not necessarily indicative that the general fund will be picking that up. That is something that we currently have some additional funding sitting in an agency fund that we can help offset, in addition to what already comes with the AP. So with that said, we're sitting just under $1 million, but I do want to point out that 125 of that is in play right now with the Mass Skills Capital Grant. It hasn't been approved, but I'm going to be optimistic and include it in this listing with a note that it's been submitted. I'll tell you, with the amount of work that we put into that, we better get it. But, you know, we've been down this road before, and sometimes it's about them distributing money to people who haven't gotten it in the past, but we're going to keep our fingers crossed. I think we stand a decent chance. The maximum on these grants were $125,000. Previously, they were $500,000. So I think they're cutting that down to give more people an opportunity to take advantage of the funding, so we hope that comes through. Do you have any questions on the grants?
A couple things. For the benefit of the committee, Curtis's overview relative to SPED Protocol 94-142, which is Special Education Support Service, and Perkins, which is generally considered to be vocational technical, are both national awards, or federal. Okay, and school systems across the country, certainly my colleagues in Massachusetts, have been lamenting the reductions in that federal aid. Obviously impacting cities even more than rural and suburban communities like ourselves. Some of the cities are significant layoffs unless they find another way to fund the positions that they formerly paid through those sources. Curtis has referenced the fact that once again we have $234,000 here for the manufacturing grant, which allowed to provide significant advancement machining equipment in our manufacturing area. And the newest request, which is the spin-off in automotive technology, which has a diesel component. The ability for us to pursue and receive money under the governor's economic plan for equipment items means that we have reduced those requests of our towns. Right? By taking those off, we're not having our students go without it, but we're acquiring the equipment that updates what we can do through state grants in this case. By not including it in the request we make of our towns in our budget, right, we literally have asked for zero investment by our towns in capital improvements. It allows the towns to redirect money that they would have provided in a traditional situation to a voc tech school to any other purpose that they wish to entertain. So this is another no cost to our communities. Our own electrical department and maintenance electrician and things like that do the necessary wiring and the staff pick up the additional skill sets needed to operate these things. But there's a double win in these categories. So without burdening or asking the towns to appropriate more money so we can stay current in these two categories as mentioned. Any questions? Thank you.
And a drum roll, please. No. Yeah, Kyle from Hades to Hades here to present. You want me to help you?
Yeah, that would be great.
Pass up the single one.
Thank you.
I happened to have it in my hand the other day.
Some light reading for you. Can I have one more note?
How was the mayor of Fall River doing yesterday? Giving your
Great
face.
question. I just had a rough couple of weeks. Not often we get that kind of excitement in Fall River. We had Aaron Hernandez, and now we've got the mayor.
They might end up in the same place, though.
They very well may. They very well may. So, hello everybody, here for our annual checkup. But what I'm going to be presenting to you today is the fiscal year June 30, 2018 financial statements, as well as our single audit report. I'm going to try to highlight some of the more important areas for you. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me at any time. I'll be happy to do my best to answer them for you. Thank you to Curtis and his financial staff, because they were great again this year. They were very prepared for us. It was a very seamless, smooth audit. No significant issues really came up, so thank you. We'll start right on page 1. Page 1 is our audit opinion. If you were to read through this 3-page report, you notice that we issued a clean audit. Basically, what that means is that we did not have any significant journal entries. We didn't note any material misstatements or departures from GASB standards or from GAAP. So, clean bill of health. It's great. The financial statements start on pages 15 and 16. Specifically on page 16, you're going to see a pretty big change from what was presented last year, especially as it relates to your net OPEB liability. So in the prior year, GASB standard 45 was still in place, and what that did is it put the amount of money that you should have been paying into your OPEB plan over the years in order to satisfy the actuarial determined contribution. And that stood at about $15.7 million last year. A new GASB standard has come into place, GASB 75, and they've taken that obligation off the books. And what they've done is very similar to your pension. They've put the full liability on the books. So that would have been $32.7 million last year, and that is up to $33 million this year. So that's the 33,054. And I believe, well, I know actually, a OPEB trust fund is getting going, getting the ball rolling. It's funded, at a pretty low percent at this point, but we're noticing that with most communities. When it was in the notes and in the required disclosure in the back of the financial statements, wasn't necessarily on the forefront, on the face of the financial statements. Trust funds weren't necessarily being created. Now that it's kind of coming to the surface and that liability is getting stuck on the books, it's becoming more of a problem issue for a lot of the communities that we're working with, and we're just starting to see trust funds implemented. So while obviously you don't have much funded at this point, that's not uncommon. Pretty much everyone is unfunded, so just wanted to point that out.
And just to comment on that, we originally tried to budget a certain amount of a contribution to at least match the employees, but our budget got cut in the prior year. This year, we are at least matching that with $15,000. And then we've also had a conversation pertaining to the state retirement pension that we have been accumulating for, that it doesn't seem like it's going to materialize, and we've had a conversation about taking those funds and making a contribution towards this particular OPEB fund in the trust fund, just so you know.
That's pretty close to my message as well. We seek to work in tandem with you. Is there anything relative to at least the utilization of the 2013 is annualized delayed billing that surfaced from the state, and to direct that along with any money included in our budget to the PARS, which is the trust fund that was created. The most recent PARS, or trust fund for OPEB report that I saw indicated that it was generating interest at 6.74%. So even though our contributions have been modest, because our budget requests have been modest, but we have another contribution. It's earning a fairly strong interest given comparison numbers, and with your support, we also hope to use at least the 2,000. I'm really focusing on 2013, which is worth 183,000, as you probably know. Okay, if we can do that, I believe it will be very much appreciated by our 126 finance committee members. That we will be reviewing the budget for FY20 as we unveil it or build it and by unveil. I'm not pushing. Obviously, the 2013 is the oldest, kind of non-billing, how can I say this? It was in a dormant phase by the state, and then I would probably be asking for 2014 to be used for FY21. Okay.
Yeah, that's a conversation that Curtis and I have had from day one when I first saw the liability, and I was just wondering what it stood for. And I think it's getting to the point where the likelihood of having to pay that is pretty low. So I think that's something that we're going to work together on in fiscal 19 and come up with a solution, especially as it relates to the 13 money. But one thing that you just pointed out, and I want to bring to your attention, I was going to get to it at some point, but it seems most relevant now. If you jump to page 54. In the middle of that document, there's a schedule that breaks out your current discount rate versus your 1% increase, 1% decrease. Right now, your interest rate is at 3.87%. As you just mentioned, your assets are working at 6.74%. So you can see the significant impact on your liability. Just 1% increase on what your assets work at has on your liability. So you're assuming your assets are going to work at 3.87% as a discount rate, which leads to that liability of $33 million. Just 1%, if it works at 1% higher, you're talking, a little over a $3 million decrease in your liability. So it's certainly a difficult task to determine the future, economically especially. But if your assets do work at a higher rate, that will have a significant impact on your overall liability. Maybe Curtis can speak to this a little bit better than me. 3.87% seems like a pretty conservative approach as far as what we're accustomed to seeing. The majority of other plans that I've worked with take an approach of somewhere between 5 and 7.5%. So maybe it's just a discussion to have with your actuary as to whether or not you want to assume that your assets are going to work at a little bit of a higher rate, because it may have an impact on your liability. And this is pretty low compared to what we're accustomed to seeing. Now, obviously, there's nothing wrong with taking a more conservative approach. I just wanted to point out that liability overall may be a little bit lower if you were to take a approach. I think the state of Rhode Island uses 7.5%. That's off the state plan, so just something to consider.
I would also hope that if we are successful in working in tandem with you, and we can utilize 183,000 in non-existent billing, okay, not to be viewed as a lien, but applying it here, plus 15,000, that's nearly 200,000 that would be deposited without asking our citizens for any more money.
Right.
Thank you.
That's definitely something that would be in the works for fiscal 19 for sure.
Thank you.
And we will work with the treasurer on that. She is the sole determiner in terms of the investments. I mean, we work together, but that is definitely her call, and she's probably open-minded to that suggestion.
Pages 18 and 19, This gives you more of a breakdown of your general fund and your governmental funds, excluding any long-term liabilities or long-term assets. So for fiscal year 18, your general fund ran a surplus of $582,000, leaving you with an overall fund balance of a little over $1.8 million. And what I'd like to point out is that it's not just $1.8 million worth of cash that's in the bank. If you flip to page 43, we do a breakout of your overall governmental fund balance. And as you can see, there's a fair amount of money out of your total fund balance of $3 million that's restricted for use on capital items, assigned for encumbrances, assigned for the production of subsequent years' assessments, and ultimately you're left with unassigned fund balance of $1.038 million at June 30, 2018. Just to give you some perspective, that's 4.36% of next year's general fund budget. Typically, and it's completely up to the committee where you want that percentage to be at, we usually see it set somewhere between 3 and 5% of the next fiscal budget. So I'd say that's a relatively healthy position that you're in as far as the general fund is concerned. I mean, if you want it to be 10%, I mean, that's certainly the committee's prerogative, but we typically see somewhere between 3 and 5. Just want to give you some perspective on that.
And you heard me use a figure, we are doing at about $1,038,000. So there is a difference between what I submit to the Department of Revenue because of the way encumbrances are recognized by the Department of Education as it relates to these statements. So what he's presenting in unreserved fund balance is an accurate number, but the other number for the total general fund does not agree with mine because of the way he has to classify certain expenditures for what is released to the general public in these financials. So, but yes, so we're certainly right around that 5%, even with that. I think 1.2 million is about 5% of next year's budget in terms of where we're at right now. So we're in good shape. But I did remind them that 360 is due to the sale of land. So
right. Yeah, that's Curtis is working on a budgetary basis versus we're working on a GAAP basis essentially. So he's not wrong in that. Pages 22 and 23. I just want to point out the introduction of your OPEB trust fund. If you're looking to get an idea of what your overall contributions to that plan were and your benefits paid out, they were both just south of $1 million, but that left you with $15,521 left in your OPEB trust fund at June 30, 2018. The notes to the financial statements haven't changed too drastically. If you jump to page 39, page 39 is your capital assets note, and one thing that definitely jumps out is right at the top is the sale of land that Curtis was just talking to. And from what I understand, that was donated property at one point in time, and it was valued at $2.223 million. So that is going to come off your books, and that has a significant impact on your total capital assets that you're showing in your government-wide financial statements. Page 41 is your long-term debt.
If I may,
Yeah,
the
of course.
school had no role in determining or working with others who determined the evaluation of this.
Okay. Wasn't me either.
That's another thing we have in common, neither of us. Okay.
Page 41 is your long-term debt. And you'll notice that there was a capital lease retirement in the current year, and also an additional capital lease that was picked up for $160,000. Page 52. We can skip through that. There's nothing that happened.
52?
I'm sorry, 52. Yes.
Thank you.
Nothing that I haven't already gone over, but just to give you an idea of the total OPEB liability compared to your position in your funding percentage. Just kind of a quick snapshot of that. Page 54, we already spoke to the discount rate. The second driving force behind your OPEB liability is your healthcare trend rate. That's what you're anticipating healthcare costs to be moving forward into the future. Your current trend rate is 9% decreasing to 5% over time. That's the only rate I've ever seen on an OPEB plan. So while that is a driving factor, it's not abnormal from what we're accustomed to seeing. Page 58, this is probably one of the more important areas that we're going to look at. And this is your budget versus actual. And a couple of things jump out. The first of which relates to your revenue on page 58 under your other revenue. You were budgeting at $100,000 for other revenue and you came in at $458,000. That increase of essentially $360,000 was from the sale of property. And the other item that jumped out is on page 59 under your instructional expenditures. And your instruction expenditures came in under budget by just south of $250,000. We did some research into this. It's about 2% of your total budget. There wasn't really one significant line item that drove that. It was just a consistent amount of line items that came in under budget. So there wasn't one specific reason. I'm sure myself and Curtis could provide some detail on that if you want, but it wasn't anything that was notable mentioned. Just 2% savings across the board. And that's really what I have for you as far as it relates to your financial statements. I can get into single audit if you want, or if you want me to wait and field some questions that you may have on the financials, I can do that first.
Anyone have any questions at this time? Moving right on.
So the second report that you have in front of you is what's called our single audit report. And basically what this is if an entity receives more than $750,000 total of federal money, you were speaking about the SPED grants and school lunch grants, those sorts of funding. If it's over $750,000, we're required to perform a single audit. So your federal funds came in this year at $1.038 million for our SEPA, and we selected your vocational occupational skills grant to be the grant that we completed compliance over. So when I say completed compliance, when you apply for the grant and you're granted the award, it comes with a set restriction on what you can use that money for. So when we complete our compliance testing, we are selecting transactions that money was spent on, and we're determining whether there was any costs that didn't meet the restrictions, didn't meet the requirements. And there were none that came to mind, or none that surfaced. We also tested reporting of that money, because you have to report it to the state and ultimately to the federal government. We didn't have any non-compliance as it related to reporting either. So overall, there was no compliance issues, and we're issuing a clean opinion on your, as it relates to compliance.
So what is the current indirect cost rate allowed by the feds to us?
I believe the de minimis rate is 10%, but I'd have to look in more detail for you.
Just wondering whether or not what you would recommend from an auditing perspective, whether or not we should continue to include indirect costs, which would be like a commission given to the school for operating the grant, or whether or not that really takes away the services provided by the grant that would go to students and the support services. One of the reasons why people may not do that. But if it could be a revenue driver, especially given difficult times, whether or not we should be including it, or separating that piece of it in filing grants.
I think that's something that's a great question. I would have to really look into that before I give you an answer. But
I'm viewing it as a question to look at, not necessarily a question to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we can look into. Really the first page of the report after your table of contents. So there's two report letters that go into this. The first of which relates to your internal controls over financial reporting as a whole. So as part of our audit, we come in and we test all of your control streams. So cash receipts, cash disbursements, payroll, and then if we have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, that's what they would be included. We did not include any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. We found that you but very strong financial controls. The second report is, oh, sorry. go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Prior to asking my questions, I didn't notice page 7, okay, which does reference the indirect cost rate. And so you've delved into that somewhat and indicated that we chose not to utilize that, or to take it away from the services provided by the grant. Whether or not we should continue to do that, we welcome your recommendation, but I didn't see that until I perused the document.
And Doc, that they issue those by the state, ours is substantially lower, and we do look at those opportunities, but our expenditures are so great in the grant that it doesn't present itself.
That was my fear.
And then there's also another thing to be aware of. When you start looking at indirect costs, you can't be selective. You have to do it to all. They even treat our school lunch program in the same manner. If you take indirect costs there, you have to take indirect costs or charge them to the other grants. So there's some interesting rules around that. But we do always look for the opportunity.
I'm not surprised, if I may, but also I see that the audit did examine that and indicated that, in our judgment, we felt it best not to take away from the services and opted not to tap the 10% indirect cost rate, which is allowable, so that the activity could benefit from the additional 10%. Okay.
So overall, if you were to look at page 8, you're going to see a really good snapshot of both audits. And if you read through that, you're going to see we didn't have any issues with internal controls, we didn't have any issues with compliance, and we are offering a clean opinion on your financial statements.
Any questions?
Good. Congratulations to the business office.
It's always easier to give good news.
Yeah. Congratulations to the business office.
So just one other item. I did hand out a budget subcommittee timetable. I am going to see if I can work with our administrative team to see if we can make some modifications to that, consolidate, and maybe reduce the number of meetings if it's possible, and get a little more aggressive. I know. Get a little more aggressive in what we can accomplish in one evening, but for now, we wanted to at least give you a profile of what we normally do, and maybe over the next 2 weeks, we can come up with maybe potentially a different plan. With that, with your permission, I would like to invite Mr. Todd Bard up from Lee Energy Group. He really needs to have a quick discussion on what's happening with the solar. For those that were on the budget subcommittee, we put about $34,000 as an offset to our supply. Do you have anything to hand out? And the project was supposed to be online December 31st. We got absolute confirmation that we were in good shape to budget for that, and unfortunately, as of this day, we're still not there. It revolves around some issues with the type of project that we got combined with, and some changes by DOER that they are not recognizing us as an entity that can participate on this style contract, although that has been done in the past.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's new regulation or just the fact that they're enforcing it a little bit differently. But Todd has been working diligently to get us back on track and to salvage this money that at this point, since July 1, we have not been benefiting from the offset. It was our goal even last year to use a portion of those savings towards other projects, but of course with the project it is up and running, we're just not able to be a part of it. So I'll let him take over and explain what has happened and what he's doing to get us back on track.
Well, thank you, Curtis. So Todd Bard of the Energy Group, I'm CEO and owner. So we're an energy aggregator licensed in the state of Massachusetts to sell power. And about 8 years ago, we got into the renewable energy space. So we're an independent energy advisor helping schools, colleges, municipalities, housing authorities get solar and wind projects and contracts specifically that are real, have permits, get built, and get the best savings. So when I met Curtis, that was one of the goals, is try to find net metering credits in the SREC 2 program so you get the highest savings. And I know in the past you guys have had a contract and it didn't get built, and that typically a lot of projects went the same way. So when we got, notified of this project that was getting built in Dayton, you were able to be a part of it through sort of a loophole in the renewable energy project design with DOER and DPU, that you could take a large project and carve out 650 kW, which is roughly 800,000 kilowatt hours, and blend a municipality with housing authorities. And the developer would get a blended SREC factor. So that's where we went in there on that premise, and Brendan Gove, or 0 Point, who's built about 50 megawatts of net metering contracts in SREC 2, and is building another 180 to 200 megawatts for the SMART program. He's done multiple projects this way, and for whatever reason, DOER said, no, you can't do it at the last minute. And
Well, without installing about $300,000 worth of equipment to try.
right, which would have then just closed the whole project up, and it would have been financeable. So we tried, I reached out to Matt Beaton and some other politicians to try to get them to reverse this only project that they made a decision to not go forward on. And up until today, that was the plan. And I get a call an hour and a half before the meeting, and then call Curtis, and it looks like Matt Beaton is now reversing that decision. So Monday, we should know that you'll actually be back on that project, and net metering credits will start flowing in 30 days. So your savings will start coming on your next billing cycle. So we've got to keep our fingers crossed that it'll go back to the original plan. And Karen Polito was a big part of getting to the DOER and saying this is an injustice to Blackstone Valley. You guys should really honor what you've allowed all these other projects to do. So Matt Beaton agreed with Brendan Gove. I reached out to Matt Beaton a long time ago. I've known him a long time, and I think it's worked. So hopefully you guys will be the recipients of net metering credits on an SREC 2 project, and then my hope is to try to find you more in the new SMART program, which is going to be called on-bill credits. So it's going to work a little bit differently, but my hope would be to get you the best rates on a real project, whether it's with Brendan or somebody else, but hopefully to save you another $20,000 to $30,000 a year for 20 years going forward. So this presentation that I actually gave you is really worthless as the paper it sits on right now, because that's if you took all on-bill credits. But I wanted to hand it out because that's the worst case scenario right now, is if for some reason last second Matt changed his mind again, which we're being told is not ever going to happen, but until I see it in a signature, I don't believe it. So this would show that you would get on-bill credits with the savings of $41,000 a year, and your previous contract year savings were going to be $33,000. So even if you get on-bill credits moving forward, you're going to save more money than Curtis had actually projected in your budget moving forward as of fiscal year 2018, correct? To 19.
2019.
2019.
We
So
hoped to start realizing last year, it just didn't materialize.
Yep. And my goal is when I have off-takers and their project doesn't go to completion, is I get them on a project as quickly as possible. So I get calls from developers all the time needing off-takers. So I vet to make sure that they have their permits, they have their approvals, and they have, most importantly, the financing. Because at the end of the day, if they don't have a bank or an equity investor putting up the $10 or $15 million, that project's going nowhere. And unfortunately, a lot of projects out this way, Broadway Electric was one, Sun Edison was another, and Blue Wave was another, that they promised the world and never delivered. And unfortunately, most people don't know it until it's too late. With most contracts, when you sign them, it's open-ended. So until that developer says he's not going to build it or doesn't build it, your hands are tied. You can't get out of the contract legally. But when I work with an off-taker, I put time limits and strict issues inside there that if they don't hit the milestones, then it allows us to get out of the contract and go somewhere else. Because timing is always an issue in solar. Because SREC 1 started, if they didn't build it, it went to SREC 2, the incentives went lower. And now from SREC 2 to SMART, the incentives are going even lower. So the savings, I got savings in, anywhere from 25 to 40% discounts. Now the discounts in SMART are anywhere from 10 to 15% of a smaller number too. So the on-bill credits are only at a retail number of probably 11 cents, where now you guys, if you get these on, net metering credits from an SREC 2, the tariff is 17 cents. So now you get a bigger percentage off a higher number. That's why your savings on a smaller amount is actually larger than the on-bill credit savings. That's why it was so important to make sure that we get those SREC 2 credits for you by this change of net being.
So I appreciate your pursuit of this. Okay, Curtis has kept me posted when we first met and interacted. Given the, the setback, if you will, relative to the inability to advance this, it's always good to have a lieutenant governor on the side. But has there been any outreach to the 5 state reps and 2 senators who serve our district?
It hasn't, because we felt, or Brendan felt, that getting to Matt Beaton was going to be the biggest factor. And when Matt said, yes, I know the project, Todd informed me of it, when Karen went to him, that's what made the decision. And the decision actually could have happened faster, but it was because of the gas explosions. Matt Beaton's been there for the last 3 weeks every single day. And Matt did say that to Brendan. He said, I could have made this decision quicker, but I just couldn't because I have to be here at this national gas and national grid, debacle.
Well, if you've secured a commitment, there's no need to pester him.
Yeah. Well, I told Curtis, I said, I think Matt would appreciate an email from Curtis saying, hey, this has impacted Blackstone Valley in a negative way. We don't understand why it did. We've been told that you've reversed that decision, and we really would plead with you to make sure that it gets done in the next few days.
Well, that would be my form of lobbying as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item up on the agenda, Anthony. Oh, sorry, time's up.
He's already late, he hasn't got out.
Blame Curtis on this one.
Yeah, and Ed Evans.
And Mr. Evans.
And Mr. Ed Evans. Got it, noted here for you.
Thank you.
That's one of the picking.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be back this month. This is not a new face. You know Mr. Evans. He's presented to you before as the assistant principal. However, this is the first time that he has presented to you as the academic coordinator. And so Eddie has taken on that challenge, that role this year. I can tell you that he's an excellent choice for the job. He's more than capable. And I can certainly say he's a fellow that is very passionate about curriculum and instruction. And that's why he's here today, is because he is going to present for us the MCAS achievement for this year. That information was released some time ago, but as you know, it's embargoed. And we have a waiting period where all discrepancies are settled at the state level, and was just recently released. And so it's that time of year when we get to give you the MCAS performance in adequate yearly progress report. And then as such, you've had Mrs. Swayze in the past present. I've always found it appropriate and best to bring the academic coordinator for that purpose. Being Mr. Evans' first time, he said, well, how granular do you want me to get? You know, we could talk MCAS for days if you want. And I said, yeah, they love that. Just kidding, Mr. Chairman. I thought about you guys. I think you're pretty well versed at this point, or at least you've been presented many times with definitions of adequate yearly progress, composite performance indices, student growth percentiles, and things like that. So I asked Mr. Evans in his first go, keep it pretty high level. Give us a good executive summary, point out some important achievements and notes in there, and we'll go from there. Obviously, you all have the ability to ask questions. We'll go as granular as you like, but that's what I told Mr. Evans to shoot for on his first go here. So with that,
Anthony, we've always said the school committee's brighter than they look.
So it was another year of high achievement and high growth for BVT students. The current juniors took the MCAS last spring, the graduating class of 2020. And the performance that they showed on this exam and the growth that they demonstrated from previous exams just highlights the commitment and investment that the committee makes year in and year out to our students, so we thank you for that. The first graph on the first page is a general overview of the performance of our students. So you can see a chart to the left with a graph on the right. The top one is our English language arts results. As you can see, 71% of the district scored advanced, 28% scored proficient, so that was 86 students. We had 3 students in the needs improvement category and then 0 failures. And you can see on the far right of each chart the state percentage. So on the higher end categories, we were above the state average, and on the lower end categories, we were below the state average. In mathematics, we had 200 students score advanced. That was 66% of testers. 25% of our testers scored proficient. 8% of our testers were in the needs improvement category, and 2% of the testers were in the failing category. In our science exam, half of the testers were in the advanced category, 147. 128 scored proficient, 16 were needs improvement, and 1 scored in the failing range. And similar to the other results, the comparison to the state is very strong. If you turn the page, you will see a greater breakdown of the English language arts scores, also with a 4-year comparison. As you can see, they are very, very similar to years of past. What I would like to draw the committee's attention to is in the chart below the graph to the right, the mean student growth percentile of 57.7. What that means is that the average BVT student who took the ELA MCAS last spring improved more from grade 8 to grade 10 than 57.7% of students statewide, with a similar pattern of historical MCAS scores. But you can see high achievement on the ELA, which continues a very positive trend for the district.
Anthony, you're doing much too good a job preparing. When you steal my thunder, I was going to trip him up to try to ask him about the progression of the students through their years.
Told you it was good. We got the right guy here.
Try to anticipate the questions before they come in. If you turn the page, you'll see a breakdown of our math scores. What I would like to draw your attention to is, again, the mean student growth percentile of 56% and what that means. There are students, as you can see, that are in the needs improvement, are in the failing category. Students who failed MCAS last spring have already been working with an instructor who specializes in MCAS remediation. They've been working with that instructor all year. We thoughtfully and strategically placed them in preparation for the retakes in November. You can turn the page. The next chart are the science scores. Student growth percentile for science is not measured, but what I would like to draw your attention to is the composite performance index of 97.9. I can go into detail on how a composite performance index is generated, but the maximum a school could get would be 100. That is a very strong score. And further charts later in the presentation will highlight comparatively very strong results in science, comparatively speaking, with some other schools and other districts. If you turn the page, you'll see a chart that shows the growth distribution in ELA. And what that shows is 28% of our testers had a growth percentile that the state would classify as very high. And this marks the 4th consecutive year where the very high growth category represented the largest distribution. So it's not just that our students are scoring high on the ELA exam, they're also improving based on their grade 8 results. If you flip the page, you'll see the second part of the chart with the ELA, but if you flip one more, you'll see the growth chart for math. 47% of our students that took the math MCAS in the spring saw very high or high growth, which we consider to be a very positive thing.
That's down from 2017 though, as in?
So you see the growth from year to year is you're always dependent on your grade 8. It's always your personal growth. So you could have students that perform very high on their grade 8 MCAS if they perform very high on their grade 10 MCAS, but it's the same score, or maybe even a point or two lower. So I can't speak to the 2017 administration. I don't have that data in front of me. But that would be determined by whatever the grade 8 results coming in were. We had some very strong results and growth within our math MCAS in terms of students that did not do well in middle school coming in here and performing quite well. We had 22 students that passed the math MCAS this year that in middle school failed it. So that would represent 7% of the testing population. If you scroll, turn to, again, the next page is just more of a chart for MCAS's fiscal year. The next page is just some definitions for you with the ranges, how CPI is determined. It has some information for you from the state on educational proficiency plans. Students that score needs improvement do not need to retake the MCAS. They officially passed it. But what we do is we have, between their teachers and their counselors, work with them on specific competencies that they need to demonstrate, and then over their last 2 years here, junior and senior year, we make sure that they can demonstrate those competencies, not through the MCAS, but through our own local indicators. If you turn the page, you'll see a chart that illustrates not the class of 2020, but the seniors of 2019 this year. As of October of this year, our senior class has a 100% passing rate on the MCAS, similar to 2004 onward. All of this year's seniors have passed the MCAS and are in line for graduation in June. The next chart is the comparison of CPI for our the entire Blackstone Valley Tech District. So the sending districts with us. They're arranged by adding each individual district CPI for each test together. The maximum one could get would be 300. And if a district had a CPI of 300, that would mean that every single student was advanced or proficient on all 3 MCASs. So as you can see, individually, the ELA percentage, we were tied with Hopedale, both at 99% advanced or proficient. In math, we were one of 3 local districts to have 90% plus advanced and proficient. And then what I spoke to earlier with our science, the students and their science MCAS performed very well with, by many percentage points, the top advanced and proficient district on that. If you flip to the next one, it's a comparative chart with all of the career technical schools in Massachusetts. As you can see, with all 3 3 of the individual exams, our advanced and proficient percentage was the highest, or tied for the highest. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to the science scores compared to the career technical, our sister schools. Those results were very strong, comparatively speaking. At this time, I can answer any individual questions that the committee may have regarding the MCAS results.
Yeah, just looking at the math again, and the chart in the middle. 2018, we were 10% combination of needs improvement and warning failing. That's double of 2016, 17, and almost double of 2015. Is there anything we can be doing going forward to try and improve that?
Yeah, so I met with the mathematics department to talk about what they thought went into that. They indicated that the efforts that they had done with the group that just took it, they felt very strong about their efforts. But one thing we did talk about was looking at the schedule to look for opportunities to differentiate math offerings, make smaller groups smaller if need be, and carefully place students with instructors if we know that they're coming in already with low scores, carefully placing them with certain instructors in the certain settings they need to make sure that they see that growth.
How about students taking it? I know we sometimes have after school MCAS prep classes, things like that. Are they being attended well?
So we actually have it in the master schedule. The students that were identified as needing it are actually taking it during the school day now. As it stands now, we don't have an after-school MCAS course per se. I know that anecdotally speaking, our math teachers have the, if you go after school and see the extra help, you will see the math teachers always have a strong
So let's keep that well promoted.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Chet, you had a question?
Yeah. How many students were failing the 8th grade MCAS that this group just passed, that we passed completely?
So in the ELA, we had 2 students who failed their ELA MCAS
In the 8th grade?
in the 8th grade, actually in 7th and 8th grade, and passed here. We had 22 students amongst this cohort that had failed their math MCAS in middle school and have since passed it. We had 0 students on both exams pass in middle school but fail in high school. And of all the math failures, they all came to us with that category in their middle school exams. So whereas we did see improvement, they haven't quite met the 220 threshold yet.
But they're close.
They're close.
So what you're saying is, we do half the academics, and we're doing more than what they're doing in a full academic setting? Descending schools?
What we saw in particular in the 22 students that I highlighted was some stark improvement. And again, they're different tests, but yes, there are, at least we have some data that would show that even if you have students that may be struggling, particularly on the composite number, it represents great growth from where they came in a couple years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because that's, I'm looking at the growth distribution, it's probably, because we often hear, well, you only take the best. Well, there was still a lot of room for growth, and we found it.
7% were failing when we took them.
I'm, well, looking at
8%.
the ELA, the high end, very high, combined was over 40% every year, except for one, since 2011. The math was 1, 2, I'm sorry, this is the 6th grade, where the high and very high is over 40% combined in growth. I mean, no matter how they come in,
They grow.
they grow, and there's room to grow. And you know, whether it's they come in failing and they, you know, we provide services and the education to get them over the top, or they come in with a certain score and they go that much further. Doc?
The way the question was phrased, you responded appropriately in the sense of looking failing versus not failing. But I think the growth is greater, needs improvement to the advanced and proficient experience. So that's what you're really going to see, which is, I mean, if failing is an F, needs improvement is a D, okay? And so the Ds are moving to As and Bs, okay? And that's, in a previous research that we were asked to conduct, it was 41% of the students in several communities were moving from needs improvement to advanced and proficient. So it does further validate your point. I have 3 points to make. First of all, I'd like everyone to be aware we do not use ACA MCAS scores as an admissions criteria. That is not a factor. We don't look for it. We don't. Secondly, Mr. Evans and Principal Steele, in the report here, they've positioned us, in the efforts of our teachers, they've positioned us again to have the maximum 25% free path of a college university in Massachusetts for the Abigail winners. So they'll be pretty, usually 75 to 80 total students. And I've received a number of communications and with some sensitivity to the manner in which this message came into me. This is from a parent, and she sent it on October 11th in the evening. I shared this with staff, when we held a faculty meeting yesterday. Dear Dr. Fitzpatrick, I'm ready to send my appreciation to you and the Blackstone Valley staff. The teachers are the best in the state. My sincere gratitude to Mrs. Karen Hale and Mr. Khalid Alhaza. Both of the teachers are truly outstanding. My son Daniel is a junior at Blackstone Valley Tech and has grown over the last few years in more ways than I could imagine. Daniel has some challenges, I'm paraphrasing here, and all his years in Midlands Grammar School he was left behind because the school couldn't accommodate to teach him the grade level material because he was not a model learner. I was told to come to terms with his disability and realize he may never pass MCAS and or graduate. This came from ascending school. I knew as a mother and as an advocate that he could learn, he just needed the proper teaching staff. I know he was a sponge just waiting for the right teacher to add water. Blackstone Valley Tech has proven my instincts to be true. Your staff are outstanding. He was finally taught the curriculum in a learning environment in which he could excel. He faced many challenges in catching up with the years that he had lost previously, but he prospered. I am attaching his MCAS results that I am so proud. At this point, he has moved and advanced in mathematics. He loves the informational technology career path he has chosen. I can't say enough about how excited he is to go to school every day. Blackstone Valley Tech has given and continues to offer the best education. I extend my sincere appreciation and special thank you for maintaining the staff and curriculum that young adults can grow, learn, and conquer their dreams. This is an example of the feedback that comes in regularly from the parents that are served by our students. And this is the kind of message that Anthony and I and Mr. Evans regularly convey to the staff. They go beyond.
Actually, not to undo that, I was going to say to go back to one, because you mentioned about going from needs improvement to proficient, also proficient to advanced.
Yes.
It's
Scaffolding.
It's that growth model. And then that aren't going to show up on some of these metrics because they were proficient already. So, no, and, taking all this together, I know you convey that message from you and from Anthony, convey it from us as well to the staff and the work they do with these students.
I called the mother the very next day.
Anthony.
Just one other point in consideration Mr. Evans and I were talking about was that we also would like to thank you for the support. We're just coming up on the beginning of budget season, starting another round of zero-based budgeting. We have come to the budget subcommittee several times with large requests for textbooks and for supplies for materials, lab equipment, things like that, and you've always supported us. And we come with this report in part to hopefully show you a significant return on the investment that you made in the staff and the confidence that you have in us to do good things with those books, supplies, materials, etc. So just one aspect we don't always talk about, but 'tis the season to start budgeting, and it wasn't lost on us. that you've also supported us and given us what we need to do a great job. So thank you.
No, thank you. It's hard to say no when it's all going for the kids.
Especially when you get a letter like that.
Yeah,
Proof is the parents.
absolutely.
Any other questions for 8.1? Mr. Evans?
Well,
See
you soon.
Man, you gave him the out, he took it.
Actually, Mr. Evans, before you go, I want you to help me pass these out. That way I'll go.
Checking already?
No, we got a text that just passed.
Next item up, just a couple
I was
of
complaining yesterday about that call.
good news, fun items for you. Homecoming weekend.
Bring your parka?
Oh, there's two different ones.
Yes,
Oh.
keep going, keep
Yeah,
going.
let's keep going.
Clean sweep.
Two, or you good?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Homecoming week, I should say. Culminating in homecoming weekend on the 27th, 28th, 29th. We have our Spirit Week. As I think you're all well aware, Valley Tech has some uncommonly high spirit here in terms of getting into everything from shop pride, class pride. Certainly the athletics is one component of it. But for us, homecoming has become about, really revolves around celebration of excellence in its many forms here. We've intentionally made it that. It's not simply a weekend or a week of athletics, it's a week of celebrating forms of excellence at BVT. We go through the different theme days during the week, but one of the big highlights is the pep rally on the Friday, which we literally term as a celebration of excellence. And I think we've invited you all to see that. It is rather extraordinary. And certainly the invite is always out there to come and see one. I know a few of you have. But it's really nice to see the culture that I'm referring to is beyond alive and well. The kids' enthusiasm, the staff enthusiasm to be part of BVT, whatever fashion that may take, is more than alive and well. We roll into the weekend itself. It's action-packed from top to bottom. Start up at 8 in the morning with pancake breakfast. Go through at this point 5 athletic contests. Really, the last event of the weekend is the football game. But this year, we have traditionally played Assabet as our homecoming opponent. And this year, we went 5 for 5 in all athletic contests. So not only was the spirit and the pride there, but the performance was there on the courts and fields. And we basically couldn't have had a better week and weekend. So happy to report that to you. I've given you some of the handouts and things like that from that Spirit Week. But it's a great experience, and if you ever need a good dose of Valley Tech, that's a great time to come and get it. It's pretty special for us. Questions on 8.2? Okay, moving on to 8.3. General Advisory Dinner is coming up. It's that time of year. The 24th, we have about 325 or so of our business and industry partners coming. Shop teachers will be here that evening to conduct their advisory committees with each program. As you know, the advisory our advisory committee has been a vital part of our planning and progression here. It's actually one of the things that makes Chapter 74 schools somewhat unique is that we do have concerted planning sessions with our industry partners to make sure that we're current with industry practices, standards, technology, equipment. workplace expectations, hiring trends. It is our opportunity to interface real time with people who are currently in the trades that we teach and make sure that we're on target. It's nice with the advisory dinner. It's also a time to celebrate that partnership, set goals and focus for the year, acknowledge some key players, and obviously, if we're meeting, we're eating. We always enjoy a showcase by culinary arts. In this case, this year, different theme every year, but this year is essentially like a backyard barbecue theme. So they're doing a lot of interesting grilling and things like that. And certainly an opportunity for culinary arts to, once again, showcase their talents and skills. You're all welcome to attend. Just please RSVP if you plan on attending. And Doc, I think you and I are the keynotes this year.
Mr. Bartlett's already recruiting new participants. He's got a
All
couple
right.
lined up. They went to join us at this gathering, but one of them is already.
Okay.
Already have that.
So you gotta get that, feed that name in, so he can be fed.
Sounds good. Any questions on general advisory dinner? All right, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes my report.
That does.
Unless there's questions?
Wait, Doc?
Yeah, I kind of promised Mr. Evans this. Mr. Evans would quietly like people to be aware that the member town of Hopedale did quite well, but he was recruited from the Hopedale school system, and he previously worked with the students who took the exam over there. He would like just, this might
wants
be,
credit.
he would like some partial consideration that he may have assisted those students. And he forgot to mention it. So I said, I'll take care of that part.
I didn't forget, in point of interest on that, we did point that out to our faculty when we presented this on Wednesday, yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Yeah. I didn't know
Things are always
all.
moving.
But in acknowledgement that Hopedale, one thing in particular, I believe Hopedale has been working really hard on their science effort, their STEM effort and things like that. And it paid off for them. They've made tremendous growth. And we're always happy, as I mentioned to the faculty, Doc has encouraged so many districts to step up their game. Hopedale did. We're really impressed by their growth and their performance. It's the first time that Valley Tech has not been the highest on that chart in quite a few years. Quite frankly, proud of our neighbors. They did a nice job, they worked hard for it and deserve the nod.
My sister Marion Candini also worked with those students.
We're gonna get our A game starting tomorrow.
I always say, if you're in first, somebody's chasing you, so you better try to stay in front of them, and if you're not in first, you better be trying to figure it out.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steele. Mr. Hanratty, Policy Subcommittee.
Policy Subcommittee, first one, Student Administration JF. That's just a small change on the safety, addressing that, correct, Anthony?
Correct.
So that's just, no,
So, do we want to accept each one or the whole group?
no, separate.
You think I'd be
Okay, I'll
separate?
make the motion to accept.
Motion made
Second.
and second to accept the student admissions. Any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. That policy is approved.
The next subcommittee disagreed on this one. It was a 3-to-1 vote. That's why I did it separately.
That's fine.
I hate dealing with admission changes in policy, because anytime you change it, you really affect someone on either end of the change. So it's going to have a problem with someone not getting in either way. So there's only one solution to this, and I don't think we're ready for it. It's a $100 million renovation project to addition another 600 students. And that won't even solve the problem, because we get 700, 800, 900 kids applying. I mean, you're going to have to over triple the size of the school to accommodate the kids that want to come here. So it's a very difficult policy to do.
Just drawing our attention, the changes are
The changes are in the
on
grading
pages 6 and-
process.
it's pages 6 and 7.
Correct. The change was to reduce the amount of points from 30 to 35,
25.
30 to 25.
I'm sorry, 30 to 25 for 90 to, now it's gonna go from 80 to 100 on for 25 points. We did this 3 years ago. We changed by 10 points. It made no difference. Am I correct in the amount of students we got? The same type of quality. It hasn't changed. The thing here is, I hate to play with the points in this particular area. I was the one who voted against it. I think if you're going to vote, you're going to change it, you got to change from both ends. I think we should probably be changing a 60 to 64 up to a 15 point to close the gap on both ends. That's one thing. The second thing I didn't like about the policy, you're adding the additional points to our end of the spectrum. Right now, we supply 25 points to the admissions, and sending schools have always spent 75. I don't like giving us the extra incentive in that area, because it points a finger to us that, look, we're changing how we're doing it, and now, if we're not satisfied, we can choose who we want. We get another 5 points to add to our area, the spectrum. So I think it's a bad way of giving the opposition more ammunition to slight us with. Those are the two complaints about it. But the other 3 members voted for it, so that's how it went.
This is a controversy across the state.
I know.
It's a topic of conversation. Valley Tech has the longest waiting list, supposedly. Even the term waiting list is a bit misleading. It suggests you're out front trying to get in, when in fact, if we're
There's no
filled at
chance.
capacity, the chances are not real good. You're quite right, we have 800 to 1,000 candidates from the district. We continue, this committee has recommended, and we certainly support, that we should not take advantage of the $16,000 to $17,000 an out-of-district student would generate for our coffers, because it would take the seat of someone in the district. And so we follow that. Not all the schools do that. Some really enjoy $200,000 to $300,000 in outside revenue, and the only way they can do that is not fill a house from their
They
district.
get the same amount of students with the plus 300,000. The other districts who do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have the same number of applicants from their district that we
No,
do.
I meant they still have the same amount of students in the high school for 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
And they're getting an additional 300,000.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're not adding more students as a result of that. You're right, you're quite right. So, we've worked with the researchers on this, we've participated in conferences. Actually, the researchers have been at the University of Connecticut and Vanderbilt now, and Harvard University. So we continue to look at the data and their findings, and we also continue to look at the ability to expand. Okay, and there's a report a little later coming up that's one of the things I was doing today. So we're trying to address this in multiple forms. As always, as a veteran school committee member, your arguments have merit and consideration. It's my understanding that other committee members, 3 to 1, are also parents, kind of thing, so they know firsthand, some of the issues that are faced. It is not uncommon when Anthony and I interact with any of the 5 state reps or 2 senators. They tell us as soon as the acceptance letters go off, the phone starts ringing at their desk.
Same with us.
Okay, and they say, and I said the same thing happens to my school committee and to us, that, as far as special appeal. We're trying hard not to take all the students that apply for some reason, so we don't drain the local school systems. We're trying to be sensitive to that. Most of the area school systems have declining enrollment. And our kids, Mr. Yitz's comments, your comments, and the chair's comments about the growth, or the messages from parents. They're like ambassadors of recruitment. When they, Julie's told us about conversations. Certainly John has, everybody has.
But if you look at the MCAT scores and look at where we're at, parents see that, and naturally they want to get the students the best opportunity to succeed.
So,
Well, my understanding of the numbers that Michelle presented at the meeting was, unless you were in that 90 to 100 grade average, you had no chance this past year.
You still don't.
Because it was such a high number.
Oh.
Now that broadens it to 80 to 100.
Well, no, but because I like to answer this, we don't tell people who to apply and who not to apply. We can only address the applications as they come in. Because my concern over that is, it's like you've got these normalizing factors in the middle, but then you got to jump at the top. I mean, obviously, at the bottom, you gotta draw a line somewhere, but it's like chunk, chunk, and boom, and it's like, there's no differentiation that allows. I mean, I understand it's, expanding some opportunities, but at the same time, I'm looking at it, I don't see that, there's gotta be a differentiation, especially if you've got some, 5 and 10s below it, and then the top end to be a 20-point gap is highly unusual when you're looking at these
The
things.
issue we've heard, there's no perfect solution here.
Yeah.
No, there isn't.
Not when you have as many candidates applying. The issue that Antioch heard is that there's a concern of grade inflation. So let's take the needs improvement student, but for some reason, the person's arriving with nothing but A grades. So if there's a determination that everybody's doing A work, but even an MCAS test taken before they get here, it doesn't match, okay? Then there's something, then if it's a criterion that's not distinguishing anything. And so that if in fact there's so many A students out there, regardless of, I guess the quality of their work, because of the great inflations that the parents and kids are demonstrating when they arrive, right? And only those who apply, you're right, there's no,
But then putting the 5 points on the interview helps.
That
balance
was
that
the
a little
thinking,
bit.
that was the thinking, that if in fact it's not, it's, what can I say, it's a criterion of little meaning if everybody is perfect, or so many are perfect, so there's a flood of those grades, and so they were trying to find ways to dig deeper, and yeah, it does put a burden upon us, and that is not the administrative team, those are the trained counselors who make these judgments in the, relative to the interviews.
I was just saying, in fairness to that, it's not like they get to just willy-nilly put a number on it.
Yeah.
They have certain criteria they have to.
I understand.
Do the best you can in an
I
interview.
understand the criteria, we went through it all, I don't wanna go into.
Yeah, no, I don't want-
Give out some of the things, how it's
As long
done.
as they don't
But-
know what the grade point average is, then the interview should be pretty unbiased.
And it's still only 30 points out of 100.
Yeah, it's.
I don't,
It's
I
still
don't
a
have a
smaller
problem, I have the
percentage.
problem where you're putting it.
I know, yeah, I understand that.
I would rather go on 2.5 to attendance, 2.5 to behavior, that type of thing. I don't want to give people saying, okay, now you change the system, you might think in the future that it's gonna swap, now you can pick who you want by adding 5 points here. That's my problem with that. And the other thing with it is, right now you need a 91 to get into the school, 91 points. God, I've been here for a while. When I first got here, it was 64. When we changed it 3 years ago, it was, I believe, 86 to get in here. So, we dropped the grades 10 points, and we went from, we added to other areas, and we went from 86 points to 91 points to get into here. So the grades really don't make that much of a difference.
But during your tenure, or that of your brother,
Yeah.
the population has doubled. It was roughly 660 declining, now there's 1,230 plus. Okay, so that there's an awful lot more getting in than, and obviously the application list is skyrocketing, but, but,
Imagine if you're still at 660, what the score would be to get in here.
as you know, you're speaking to someone who walked the
I know.
home to home in Millbury to convince them to support the expansion that has allowed us to accept more kids across this district. And we did that because, and we had support from the Finance Committee at that time, in Millbury and elsewhere, that we were convinced, and the school committee at the time was convinced, that there would be more students who would apply and more students who would benefit. That vision is true. Anthony is, chiming here at the opportunity, but one of the things that I wouldn't be surprised he talks about is that we also want to continue to support what we call the trade and industrial career paths, that, that the A students, or the students who are rising to the top relative to the candidates up there,
I understand,
have
it's
been
hard to
lesser
fill automotive
quantity.
and a few of the other
Lesser-
trades with
yeah.
these type of students.
Yeah, and we want to be respectful and responsive to that mission as well, in that
But at the
regard.
same time, you should bring up the D to kind of offset a little bit where the grades, that gives the guy a chance.
Well, I
60,
think,
65, to that type of thing.
I think it's good to have conversations and to continue. If we, our willingness to look at the admissions is because we're trying to figure out other ways to address this concern.
It's a no-win situation to anybody.
Well, let me ask a
No matter how you do
question.
it.
Let me ask a question this way. What was the justification of putting it in the interview and not say the local guidance counselors? or back into attendance.
Answer that.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I'll let
Yeah, yeah.
submit,
Yep.
because we have found that the guidance counselor is not giving the student that's applied here a fair shake.
Okay.
If that student is an exemplary athlete or something like that, districts have wanted to keep them in their district.
They might be giving them a score based on something other than whether or not BVT is the right place for them.
No, they give them a 0 instead of.
And it's been known.
Okay.
There's names up there, there's parents that have asked afterwards to find out why. And that's why we, giving them that much power over the, over the student's ability to come here. I mean, the student controls the rest of it, except for those 15 points.
Oh no, that's why that's why I asked.
No,
you
we
this.
had a long discussion about this.
I could only imagine because like I said, this is a hot button topic. Every time we
Yeah,
get
it is.
anywhere
Not
near
just here.
this,
Not just here, but
Yeah.
particularly here because of the appeal of this system,
Well-
okay, and the confidence that the parents have.
I like that.
One of the other things that we've discovered through the data analysis, in some cases, the guidance counselor, I don't want to be the pivot, I want to decide. Every kid gets the same number of points. The whole pool gets that. You look at, if there's 25 recommendations, all have the same number. Well, does that mean they're all in the honest, sincere judgment, the kind of thing?
The same thing has happened when it comes to the discipline
Yeah,
points.
so, and that's not unique to here. I mean, my conversations, Anthony's conversations with our colleagues in other systems, that sometimes this is the kind of experiences. I mean, Shawsheen refuses to give any consideration to the sending school council. They don't trust them. I said, well, we do. We try to work with them. We have breakfast in this very room. We share information. And those who have integrity, it works fine. If you're controlled by a coach or someone else, that disrupts the process.
Yeah, just a quick metric on the logic and philosophy behind the adjustments to the grade averages. In 2018, looking at 750 applicants, 617 of them had grade averages between 100 and 80. In 2017, 765 applicants, 613 of them had grade averages between 100 and 80. And so what our current award scale for scholastic achievement, you could pretty much say the whole pile gets the maximum number of points. You compound that what Mr. Braz is saying, geez, whether it be for some calculated reason, they could take points away, or more like what Julie's saying, geez, there's a fear factor. I better give the kid the most points or I'm going to get a tag. But you find that the distribution wasn't there. It wasn't differentiating, if you will. One more component to it is that when we went back and applied this change to previous admissions data, we found that it would likely, because it de-emphasizes some scholastic achievement, it would give you some favorable fills with some of the shop areas that are less sought after. And some of them would surprise you too, like HVAC and manufacturing, the automotive trades and so forth. That, one thing that the higher end academic emphasis does is a disproportionate number of students coming in and they're all seeking either engineering or the health sciences or something, and ultimately they wind up disappointed because those shops are full. And so you end up with a dissatisfied student because, if you will, they came in and couldn't access the programs because they filled up. And so we thought that it did a number of things to help keep us in balance. But Mr. Hanratty has a great point. Here I was thinking that, well, a lot of the school districts, I've heard the criticism say, you're creaming, you're just looking for our best students, you take them from us. We don't agree with that, but thought that it might be appreciated that we de-emphasize scholastic achievement by another 5 points. And Mr. Hanratty's right, we did this already once. It used to be 40 and we dropped it down. He's not incorrect either, that the problem with if you will, this issue got worse, not better. So I was thinking, geez, who wouldn't appreciate this? We've de-emphasized academics by another 5 points. And we could put it in the area of interview, because we could also create the rubric for the interview such that students expressing their desire to be, access what we have to offer might help with the balance. But Chet pointed something else out too. He's like, sure, yeah, there's also people who will say, oh, look at that. You took it away from Scholastic and you gave it to the interview so that you could control it and control even more how you skim the cream or, cull the crop here. And so I didn't see it that way, but it's a good viewpoint. He's probably accurate with that. And that's why you hear a lot of talk about how there is somewhat of a no-win situation. I like Chet's idea. We're going to get us another $100 million, and we'll expand the school and eliminate the waiting list, and it'll go away. But it's
After Friday night.
unrealistic, of course. But this is part of the problem of having a highly sought-after school district with a very competitive application process. The rationale behind this is to best serve our students and our mission. And that's what we're trying to do. As imperfect as a science as that may be, that's what we're trying to do.
I was gonna say, and to flip it over onto, because the other part with it being in the interview is it would give us an opportunity to try and identify the, quote, right kid.
Yes, we're looking for the kid who says, I want to come and study the trades or study.
Right, as a
why do you want to?
Yeah, I'm a third generation plumber or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, find that kid,
Yeah,
this
but
is where he
nobody should be
belongs.
entitled because they're a third generation plumber. They
No,
students
no,
individually
you-
they earn the spot.
You said entitled, but we're not talking entitlement, but find the kid that this is the right place for him. This is where it would be best, we're serving the kids and
Yeah,
not.
but the kids you're serving here, you're not serving the kids you're not gonna take.
But
That's why I said
as
it's
long
a
as we have
no-
less seats
But we-
than there are applicants, that'll always happen.
We're always
No
gonna have that
win-
problem.
It's no win situation.
But this was just to flip it over a little bit, that the interview may be a good place for somebody.
The interview is going to help us find that kid that can articulate why they want to be here, that might be a wonderful plumber, might be a great HVAC kid.
No question.
But academically, that's where that child struggles. But he's going to be a great vocator.
So now, when they come in and say, geez, how do I get my kid in school? I'm gonna say, when they do the interview process, tell them you wanna work in a trade. So it changes the whole work.
I was just saying, I think there's more to that, that's
Before we
what.
pursue a debate like that, just understand that with 617 of your applicants, between 180 is their GPA. I'm not talking about a different set of kids here. You're still gonna have the kids who are between 100 and 80. So what I'm trying to say to you is that both kids sitting in front of you have the same grade average. One of them articulates why he or she wants to come to the school and access folk tech education. One of them says, well, I really want to be a lawyer, but your school is better than mine, so I think I want to come over. It might give you the ability to help the student
And
who wants to
all we can
access
do.
what you have.
Right,
That's all we can do.
Until the kid sues you.
Until the other kid sues you later.
Yeah, that's real life. That's the work life.
Did we vote? I just want to
It
make a
hasn't been moved
commitment.
yet.
Okay, well,
Tell
we obviously would recognize that the subcommittee voted 3-1, okay, and had a robust conversation and a good conversation, and we encourage that. But the commitment I'll make, to all 4 voters of that subcommittee, is that we will continue to look at this to see its impact, as we looked at the previous one. It's not a forever kind of plan. We have to even file it with the state and say that.
And we need their approval for that.
We do,
need the
following your approval, okay? And we will also continue our conversations with these colleagues from the other schools. How's your admission plan working, not working, kind of thing. And we will continue to look at expanding our ability to serve more students in a controlled manner. One of the issues that we didn't have years ago is when not all the systems that feed us had declining enrollments. So now that there's declining enrollments and the level of confidence and parents are having with us and the number of applications, it's a convergence of issues.
We're good to go.
Good to go.
Is it the appropriate time to make a motion?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say,
Motion to accept the new
motion made and second to accept the
school admissions.
modification to the school admissions policy. That still has to be, approved by the state, submitted to and approved by the state report and go into effect. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries by a majority.
Item C.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda.
Okay, the homeless policy. Let me get that one. This is for students who are homeless and live in the district and might find, let's see where it is. Page 2, you'll see where it's been changed in red. Different reasons for living here. We have students who don't live in the district now, but were homeless here and had to move to another district, and they're still in our school system. This is to allow for the homeless students, the changes that are on the...
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion made and second.
Oftentimes,
Questions, comments, discussion?
yeah,
Doc?
oftentimes viewed as McKinney Vintos situation. Okay. As a crossroads.
These are changes that came down from the state.
Yeah,
Recommended.
these are recommendations of the state.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I see, superintendent to superintendent, I mean, it's a title change. type
That's a
stuff.
home change there,
Yeah.
but the rest of it was
Happy to class.
state driven.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
The meal plan is a change to not identify students who are receiving free meals. Basically what it is, to not give them any slight whatsoever. That's the change. Any questions?
Motion made and second. Questions, comments, discussion? Doc?
We have confirmed that our previous approach relative to these students has been sensitive to their needs without the loss of nutritional opportunities. But we thought it appropriate, given the controversies that exist in so many places, highlighted by the newspaper articles and things, that we should even strengthen that. Okay, so.
So this is a change we're doing on our own?
We initiated. I can say that.
No, this is-
I didn't read the entire change, but.
No,
Yeah.
Versus something from the state?
the state is recommending
Yeah,
that we go to this.
The state
second.
recommending it.
It's in concert with what the state's recommending.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Chet.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda, Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you have within your mail documents, and in some cases, annual reports to distribute on the home front at the respective communities. This is the 26th annual report on return on investment printed by our students. And it is intended to show people what we do with the money that they provide us. So, and we've asked school committee to again assist us in saving postage by delivering them. Please recognize that in several cases, the town offices are not open 5 days a week now, so you gotta, coordinate your delivery. Okay. Any questions of that?
They're right here behind me if you grab them on your way by after the meeting.
Item 10.2, you have a snapshot of the, as we continue to monitor the enrollments. We are now working with all the towns to confirm that a student who's informed us that they live in that town, in fact, the local school system agrees that they live in that town. Let's say it that way. All right, so this is not something that we're suggesting to be distributed in any form, as we haven't, it's like embargoes. We haven't heard from all of the school systems that, and there are a couple of questions being raised, or whether, whether a student transferred and when did they transfer and things like that. So we'll be working with our sister system throughout the district to confirm our numbers. But this is a snapshot at this point. Any questions on that? So, I did meet a couple weeks ago, I may have mentioned this previously, with the 7 town managers, And I gave them kind of an estimate of an increase or decrease in their, October 1 count, because they were looking for some kind of a gut feeling of what numbers. So, but I asked them not to do those as finalized numbers as well. Comments, questions? Hearing none, moving on. 10.3, I think we've already addressed this with the auditor's report. And we've got some strategies here to make progress with our OPEB, and we continue to earn interest, and continue to try to find ways to boost this, to better protect us going forward. Any questions on that? All set? Okay. Item 10.4. Earlier today, I spent 2 hours with the State House, interacting with staff members of the administration finance branch of the state of Massachusetts, and continue to have conversations with them about trying to find alternative ways to see if we can secure some money to grow without asking our taxpayers for those dollars to do it. So, looks like it's an ongoing conversation.
I think it's fair to say that growth is not just for the purpose of taking on additional students, but for the purpose of serving trades and
It's a blendable bill, okay? Because they're fully aware of the huge waiting list, okay? From the Northeastern report, by the way, and other reports. Any questions on that? Seeing none, hearing none, moving on. There have been a flock of recent presentations. Earlier this week, we were invited to no, the first one is the New England group, sorry. I was invited to make a presentation in Stowe, New Hampshire, and I did drive up there, 3.5 hours worth, to join their fall conference for a one-day activity, and I was invited to make a presentation. So, okay, that's a New England group of professional educators. The second one is the accreditation group, which is what I was jumping to. 17. I think it's the 16th. Okay. No, it was all Wednesday. On Wednesday morning, we went up to the Westford Regency, just up 495, to make a presentation about our model programs involving integrations, projects, and external partnering. Later, any comments or questions about that? We do have a document, I think it's 10.5B, which is this document, which was one of the handouts of that presentation. It was thought that the signage, which was recognized earlier tonight in school board, were perfect examples of partnering for external partnerships and multiple integration projects, but there were a variety of others, and they were simply provided as samples. In the evening of yesterday, the Red Sox were winning. I joined Mr. Bartlett for an Upland Men's Club presentation. I'd say there were about 25, 30 business people there, so it was a doubleheader, okay, if you will, morning and evening. And they had invited me to be their keynote speaker to gain more insight into how Valley Tech adds so many, resources to the district over and above the budget. And so it was a good chance to receive a nice message from a couple of people already. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yes, a couple of people expressed interest in the advisory meeting. And one is joining us next Wednesday. Hopefully I can be there.
Yeah, it's kind of an example of these presentations. You meet business people, and in some cases they're willing to indicate their interest in expanding to our advisory committee. And so we're glad to have that type of recruitment, and also the opportunity to share information about our budget going forward and our approach. Any questions? Seeing none, moving on. We've had a number of visiting educators come through. We had the National Defense University. They wrote to Anthony following the visit. Dear Mr. Steele, on behalf of the NDU National Group, International Fellows Class of 2000, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude for hosting at Blackstone Valley Regional Voc Tech on September the 21st. The tour of your institution was a very valuable experience, and I'm sure that I speak for our entire class when I say that we came away very impressed with the quality of the facilities and the caliber of your students. Our visit on BVT on Friday the 21st was our second visit to American high schools that day. we did spend the morning across the street at Nipmuc Regional High School. Seeing the contrast between the two schools was extremely useful for us in pursuing our objective of learning more about the systems of education in the United States, as we discovering instructional priorities at your school and the unique opportunities, extracurricular and otherwise, afforded to the students of BVT. We especially enjoyed the opportunity to interact with students in the robotics section and the chance to try out their innovative robotic designs. Please extend our thanks to these amazing students, and it continues to go on, and also conveys appreciation to Nicole for coordinating. This is the current class leader is the Brigadier General from Jordan. Okay, so these are retired generals from across the world. Okay, that's pretty interesting, in their multiple uniforms and diversity. So, any questions on that? In typical fashion, I have invited the two newest school superintendents in the district to stop in to see their school, which is we're an extension of their school system, and both new superintendents have agreed to do that. So on the 24th, the new superintendent from Blackstone Millville, Jason DeFalco, came over and spent a few hours with me. We walked the hallways, and I've already seen him at a couple of meetings, one of which I recommended that he take in. Right. And the new superintendent from Uxbridge, Frank Piano, is scheduled to come. He was originally scheduled to come before this school committee meeting, but he had changed that, so he's rescheduled for the 30th. So once again, we're pleased to host him and to demonstrate our willingness to work in a partnership fashion. On the 12th of October, one of the newest consultants, lobbyists from the Mass Association of School Superintendents, a gentleman by the name of Trip Jones, spent several hours here. So I took him for a tour. We do our best to provide information to as many people as we can. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, new business for the school committee. Do any school committee members have any new business? John?
Yes, the facilities committee met last night, just informal, and just got an update from Teddy Moran, filling in for Jim, on what was going on in the school. I'm very impressed myself personally. I think the committee was too, and the input that he gave us on what's being done at the school, in Jim's non-presence to help out. I think we're doing okay.
Right.
Thank this gentleman here for a great job on the sign. Looks good.
Any other new business? Doc?
A couple items. As you probably noticed in the packages received, we received a letter of retirement from the secretarial support person in the principal's office. So she gave proper notice, and we should go back. Also, we have continue to receive messages of accolade, positive feedback. This is a sample. The veterans agent from Milford sent over a congratulatory note for the fact that BVT was named one of the top 25 high schools in the country. So, pretty remarkable accomplishment, and we're pleased that people are noticing it, and extending congratulations to our staff and to you for this achievement.
Thank you very much. Any other new business for the committee? Seeing none. Items for the good of the committee are available if you want to request a copy. I don't know what Jack's going to do with the extra copies since Jerry's not here.
Available.
Next school committee meeting, November 15th. Seeing as we've concluded our business on the agenda. Motion made, second. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.